plenty of editing. I'm the queen of editing. It's one of the reasons why I stick to a strictly audio podcast, because I can do so much more to clean it up.
So we're not on film for this.
No, I haven't done anything with the visual stuff.
Good. All right. Well, I'm glad I didn't bother with a full face of makeup.
There you go. I still did, because I feel like I can't show up on a Zoom call anymore without putting a face on, but because it's all about authenticity, right? This is how we look all day, every day. All right, so I'm going to launch into my delightful little intro here, and then we'll jump in. Do you have any questions before we start?
I do not.
Okay. Welcome back to Talk Fiction, the podcast dedicated to entertainment media's most overlooked underdogs, fiction writers. I'm your host, Meg Olders, author of the Empress Editions 2026 debut novel, C. Smile, and creator of the dynamic newsletter anthology, Beautiful, Daring, Stupid. My guest today is Troy Ford. Troy is the author of Lamb, a queer coming-of-age novel in snapshots, and creator of the Substack newsletter Ford Knows Books, which offers a weekly dose of Troy's original writing, soaked in lunacy and dusted with insights, sometimes silly, sometimes serious, basically a fruit basket with fur. His words. Ford Knows Books is also home to the Books We Love Club and the Road to Published series. In addition to cultivating his own diverse garden of creative projects, Troy is the founding father of QStack, the best-selling newsletter, directory, platform, and community for queer writers and creators on Substack, and he was recently made an associate producer on the This Queer Book Saved My Life podcast. I will share links to Troy's growing collection of inspired works in the show notes, but without further ado, allow me to introduce my distinguished guest, Mr. Troy Ford.
Meg
Hi,
Olders,
Troy.
thank you so much. Hello.
Welcome. So I'm like only just a little bit nervous because you are on podcasts a lot. I feel like I have to show you a really good time today because you've been on so many. So the pressure is on.
I've been looking forward to it.
Excellent. I'm so glad to hear that. So you and I met through our shared love of Ben Wakeman, I would say was probably our connection point, and the Same Walk, Different Shoes.
Oh, God. Do you remember you wrote the story?
I do remember.
Based on my prompt.
Yes.
From my own life. My God, that's right.
Seems so long ago, and I guess it was almost 2 years ago.
Was it really? Has it been that long? Oh my gosh.
2023, December is when we did that. That went by fast.
It sure did.
Yeah, but since then, we've remained on each other's radar, which I'm very grateful for. And I actually first asked you to guest on my podcast well over a year ago after I read your Slow Grow Your Substack post, which is probably one of your best performing posts from.
It's the best. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in that post, you used a phrase where you encouraged us to embrace our boutiqueness.
TM.
And I just latched onto that phrase. I was like, I have to talk to this person. And of course, I had my own reasons / me falling apart for a year, which is why I didn't get to talking to you until now. But I'm so pleased that we've had this much time to grow since then. So we have so much more to talk about now.
Indeed.
And of course, there are plenty of buzzwords, boutiqueness, authenticity, all that stuff we're going to get into today. But the first thing I want to talk to you about is writer's block and the question of, is it real or is it really something else? And I want to talk to you specifically about this because you lead in your bio and, your about page with this very bold print paragraph about how you've returned to writing now after a multi-decade bout of writer's block.
Yeah, 34 years, I think is what it came down to. Basically from the time that I was, a teenager, just coming off of a horrifying experience at Harvard Summer School, of all places. And then until I actually sat down in 2020 during lockdown, actually, with nothing else to do. My husband was in the bedroom, working remotely, and I was unemployed at the time. Well, still unemployed technically, but and so, and we just had this 2-room. It was a good size, but it was just 2 rooms in Barcelona, and I had absolutely nothing to do. And I was like, I came to Barcelona in part to try one more time to write a novel, and it finally stuck. So 34 years of writer's block.
Yes. Now you just said you were going to try one more time, which suggests to me that during that 34 years, you did make attempts, which meant you were writing. Yes, a
I
little bit here and there.
No, I was writing. I was writing. I guess writer's block maybe is a bit of a misnomer, although I'm sticking to it.
Hmm.
It was that, but that was what my heart was set on, was to write novels. And I started probably over a dozen novels during, all those years, and made, some real attempts. And would get maybe like 40, 50 pages into whatever project I was working on. And then I'd get to that kind of moment, and, that every writer has, when the initial inspiration, the initial, oh, this is a great idea, thing kind of, you get it out, you 30, 40, 50 pages, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh God, I've got to write the rest of
I got to
it.
keep going.
Yeah. The muddy middle, I guess, is what they call it.
Yes. Well, and this brings up the question whether or not we should call it writer's block, because another thing that you've mentioned in your writing is that you dealt with a lot of anxiety as a young person and
Still,
through those years of writer's block.
yeah.
And I, for one, am starting to realize that when I get stuck in my writing, it's often less about the writing specifically and more about me being blocked, like trusting that I can do what I'm trying to do. So it becomes like almost like a fear. I think writer's block is more of
It's
fear.
it's all about fear.
Yeah, it's 100% about fear. Like you're afraid you won't finish it, or you're afraid you will and no one will like it, or you're afraid that what you've written so far is garbage. It's literally all anxiety,
Yeah.
really, when I think about it now. And so when people say like, "Oh, there's no such thing as writer's block," it's like I get it. It's not like "Oh, I can't think of enough ideas." That's never the issue. If anything, I have too many ideas. Wouldn't
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
wouldn't you
yeah.
agree with that?
I mean, there's as many different kinds of writer's block as there are writers, I suppose. I just I couldn't get past it. I couldn't get past that feeling, that initial feeling. And, I'm actually going through it kind of right now. I'm writing a follow-up to Lamb, and I am about halfway through. And, I've really been muddling around these last couple months on it, because that rough draft is rough. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You always compare yourself to finished, published
Yes.
works that have been run through the mill and have had editors and
Mm-hmm.
have had, readers and, publishers and, a million different hands working on it. And, at least for the moment, at any rate, as a self-published author, I'm the only one doing that, So, but even before that, in the rough draft, it's like, it's not supposed to be beautiful, and yet they don't tell you that,
Right.
They don't tell you that in, writing classes. They don't tell you that. Maybe now they do, I hope they do, because it's like one of the most basic fundamental things. The rough draft is meant to be rough.
Right.
It's meant to be a mess. It's meant to be a muddle, And so, but at the time, I would look at this, this soup.
Right. But it's being brave enough to write the soup down though. Like with the novel that I'm now finally getting published, I wrote it in such a weird way. Like the first few books that I wrote them very linearly. It was like I started at the beginning and I wrote until it was over. But this one I saw scenes in my head, and when I saw a scene and I felt it, I would go write it down, and they were out of order. There were things happening that I knew would be at the end that I was writing well before the stuff that would lead up to them, and it was a weird way to write, but eventually I was able to piece a book together out of it. And so I think if I had like gone to some writing class with that and said, well, like, I'm writing this completely out of order or with no plan, it might have been like suggested that I not do that or something. So I'm just glad I did, I guess.
Yeah.
And as far as like feedback goes, this is the problem I have with like not necessarily professional feedback, but when you get into like a writer's group and you come with something messy, people want to find something wrong
Yeah.
with it. It's like they think you're there so that they can tell you, well, here's all the things you have to fix. But I think that's backwards. I think what we need to be doing, at least in part, is telling each other what we've done right
Yeah.
and what is really working in the mess, so that as the writer, we can go and be like, okay, I need to take that little gem in the mess and make that bigger for people because they obviously connected with that. But I think that's the problem. And I read about your story about the Harvard summer school and
God.
that horrifying teacher.
Yeah.
And that's all it takes. It takes one person to just like shoot your balloon out of the sky.
Yeah.
And then it's like, because the problem is we have our inner voices too that are already telling us, ooh, who am I to think I can write a book? And then you have someone who's done it or is teaching people how to do it that also tells you, yeah, you shouldn't be doing you
Yeah.
shouldn't be
Yeah.
doing this.
Yeah.
That's two people now that like, that's too many. Well, let me ask you this follow-up to the writer's block question, because this is something that people talk about, which is kind of like creative seasons. So I'm curious now that you're through the big, massive, multi-decade block.
Yes.
Do you have a different view of the time that you were away from writing now that you're kind of in it in a more positive way and finding some success? Do you look back on it and be like, maybe I needed the space or maybe I needed the experience? Just curious.
I don't regret it. I'm very much like I've always been very much sort of focused on the idea of how, and this is, this is true of many, many areas, but in publishing especially, you want, that book to come out and you want it to be, you want to find an agent and you want to find a publisher and you want to be on a bestseller list and you want people to, sort of like be like, oh my God, it's so lyrical, it's so poetic, blah, blah, blah. And I just keep thinking to myself, even now, I'm not polished, you know, I am not put together. I am not, you know what I mean? Like this is absolutely like I myself and my whole writing and publishing venture is so completely like scaffolding up, tarps down, it's such a work in progress. And that may mean too, that the things that I publish are, look that way. But one of the things that I've always kind of wondered about is how we're expected to be perfect from the first moment, you know what I mean, that we're suddenly on that stage, on that platform, and we've got to be perfect. And there's people who stand up there and they look perfect, but
Right.
that's not me, and I suspect that's not most people.
Right.
And, that comes again after all those hands and all those eyes and all those people have been working on making this, so that when you do step up, in that beautiful gown, with your hair up, that you look perfect. And that's just so kind of like far in the future for most people that are, want to write, are writing, are first taking those steps, which is where I kind of feel like I still really am, you know what I mean? That it just isn't helpful. And we need to really, as you say, get back to creativity. You know what I mean? I would love to just be like in this messy workshop where, people are not like, and here is my latest piece, and people are like, oh, like that is good or that is bad or whatever, it's like I want people to just really dig in, but in an authentic way, in air quotes, you know what I mean? In a way that's
Hmm.
like, this is why this didn't work for me. When I look back at that experience I had at that summer school class, all of 16 years old, and had a teacher write in, red pen across the page, "What a joke." That is so unhelpful in so many ways.
Right.
You know what I
Who
mean?
hired this
Yeah,
person?
well,
Right.
I think, and it's not just writing and it's not just publishing, it's society in general. You know what I mean? It's influencer culture, it's social media,
Hmm.
it's everybody needing to look perfect at all times,
Yeah.
regardless of what they look like behind the scenes. So I'd like to see, I want to see behind the scenes.
Well, yes. And this is like my whole thing too. And I've said this a lot in my writing and on the podcast is that what you see as success, air quotes, again, I do air quotes all the time, even though this is only audio, which cracks me up. But that's why we say air quotes out loud so the audience knows what we're
Yes,
doing. But success is like this person on a pedestal where everything went their way, but we're not seeing the years they spent getting red pen across their papers.
true.
How many people did you walk up to and like live pitch your book to, or how many people did you, embarrass yourself in front of gushing about your stories, whatever.
Yeah.
I like to hear those kind of stories. But like the alternate road. See, this is another reason why you're here in particular is because you kind of dug your own path to getting your book into the world that didn't involve agents and publishers because that's a long ass road that very, very few people
Yeah.
get onto.
That's true.
Very few. Like we don't talk about how few.
Yeah, and more and more, I'm questioning, myself about whether that's even a road I want to go down. I
Yeah.
mean, yes, and of course, everybody's just like, of course, why wouldn't you want that? You know what I mean? It's like it can make the difference between 20, 30 reviews and a few hundreds of books
Hmm.
versus thousands of reviews and five, six figure advances and blah blah blah.
Right.
But knowing myself, there are moments when in the cold dark of night, I think to myself sometimes, I don't want that.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would be good at that. Not so much the writing, you know what I mean, but in the personality and the God, what is it called when, the character almost, you know what I mean, of being, a best-selling published writer or whatever. I just don't know that I want that now in my life that I could deal with that, you know what I mean? And so, at the moment I'm kind of, although Lamb in particular was conceived and written as it was self-published on as a serial on Substack in part because I wanted to try self-publishing. And I still think it's a good idea for anybody to kind of start building up, you know what I mean, with some early efforts or, whether it's just on Substack or any, another newsletter platform or whatever, but to start building up that platform, which we'll talk more about, but
Hmm.
the platform as well as the readership, that's not based on the, legacy publishing apparatus because you get that out of the gate bestseller first thing and then your second book doesn't maybe perform as well, you know what I mean, and then next thing you know you don't have an agent or a publisher anymore, and now what?
Yeah.
It
Right.
is so fickle.
Yeah. There's new pressures like around every corner. And I think those of us who are, taking independent routes or alternative routes to like getting our books in the world, when you see the person with like the agent and the big five deal, you think, oh, they made it. But then you hear stories later. It's like, whoops, I didn't sell enough copies and now they don't want my next book. Or now,
Hmm.
my agent's gonna ditch me or whatever. Like it happens a lot. And again, these are the stories we're not hearing. We're
Exactly.
only hearing the stories of when it works. So we think, well, if it doesn't work for me, there's something wrong with me, which is not the case. Now, before we like totally eat up all, oh my gosh, we're going to be talking for so long, but this is good. So now we're going to switch to
Okay.
platform because we've kind of
Yeah.
segued. So you have a fun post in your Road to Published series called Platform Schmatform, which I
Yeah.
had to double check my spelling on because spell check didn't like schmatform, but I did. So there is, and I've been hearing this too, because like, I've been doing, in addition to attending some conferences in the last several years, it's been a while since I've been to one because they're really expensive. And I feel like a lot of times the material is just recycled and I've heard
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah.
I've done like webinars and things, and the platform building thing is a big one. You hear a lot. It's like, well, if you're going to get a book out, you have to have a platform.
Yeah.
And of course, that's such a vague term
It
for people
is.
who aren't in the industry already. And also, it's not like you just snap your fingers and you have a platform.
Mm-mm. No.
So it's what I think was beautiful about Substack in the beginning. When did you join Substack, by the way? I'm curious.
Beginning of 2023.
Okay. So, like, shortly after I started in the fall of 2022. So, really close.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, you can attest to the fact that it was a very different place then than it is now.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
It felt more like a place where you could build not just a community of people that were interested in what you're doing, that you were interested in what they were doing, and that was really fun, but also like I was gaining subscribers at like a pretty healthy pace
Yeah.
through things like the recommendation engine and, cross posting and all the stuff that kind of has gotten buried a little bit.
Yeah.
Like now, because everything is about notes and
I hate notes.
getting followers, air quotes, which are not the same as subscribers. So now it's become more like social media in that it's kind of exhausting
Yes.
trying to grow now, where before it was, I don't want to say it was effortless, but I wasn't putting a ton of effort into getting new subscribers because I was showing up and writing and posting, and I was showing up in other people's writing and commenting.
Yeah.
And that was like enough to get people to know what I was doing. So, like, I'm curious how you're managing like the shifts on Substack. Because you're doing a lot. I was thinking about, like, you're trying to write this second book, but you're also juggling like a crap ton of stuff now because this
Yeah.
is all the platform. Now you're doing some teaching on your site and you're doing the podcast and you're doing Q Stack. So you have like a lot of arms now on your platform, which is what essentially a platform is. But how much time does that leave now for you to do your independent creative work? So I'm guessing I'm asking, how do you manage keeping the platform afloat, but also moving forward
Not very
with your
well.
own stuff? This is like a
Not very
real
well. I'm
challenge.
completely overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's hard.
And as I think I've told people, I have shingles
Yes.
at the moment, and I firmly believe that it is a result of working like an absolute maniac for the last year.
Yep. Stress.
Finishing up Lamb on the serial and then writing additional material for it in order to make it, officially novel length, and then rewriting, editing, book cover, marketing, everything. I did my own website. I did as much of it as I possibly could because it's incredibly expensive to put a book out.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, so even now I'm finding I have to really pull back on some of the stuff that I used to sort of do religiously, like, unfortunately reading other people's posts and really staying involved with their work as well
Yeah.
as mine. I did that, for, over 2 years, 2.5 years or whatever, like I said, religiously. I really wanted to be there for other people because I really wanted them to be there for me. And at some point I was just like, I just can't. Like I would look at a post that someone had done and it would just be like the light would go out and I would just be like, I can't stuff another thing into my brain.
Right. Yes.
And so I've had to let even commenting, even the comments on my own posts, people are, sort of will be like, oh, that's so wonderful. And I can't even reply to them, even, to say thank you sometimes. I can hit a heart button,
Yeah, I
and
know.
it's sincere, but I'm just, and yes, it does make it harder to write. It makes it harder to do the thing that we're here to do in the first place, which is to be creative and to write and to do that kind of thing. And that is a real problem to know when and how to, pull back or, how to get that balance just right. And so like I said, it's a work in progress, and I've started saying no to certain things.
Yeah.
I'm trying at least to communicate to people that, it's not just the work itself, but, health issues. My dog has cancer,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, he's on chemotherapy. My husband is working like a dog also and has, he's gone for 2.5 weeks right now. So I'm here by myself in a foreign country where I don't speak the language. And that was one of the things I sacrificed in part, to write my novels and build my platform and, to do all that was at some point I was just like, I can't learn Spanish on top of everything else.
Right.
I can't learn
Take something
Spanish. You
off
know
my
what I mean? I
plate.
mean, I could, but I don't,
Yeah.
I'm not learning Spanish
Right.
because it just was like there's only so much, RAM in there. And I
Yeah.
do really feel like sometimes I can actually hear the gears in my brain, grinding.
Yeah. Well, and this kind of I have a little later in my questions, but I'll just jump to it, is that, you wrote a post about taming the monkey mind.
Uh,
I think what's happening now, and this is just the way of the world, and I hate that. It's like this is how it is now. I'm like, but I still don't like it.
yeah,
That part of the struggle of creating output now as a creative person is just how much input
yeah,
we're taking
yeah.
in every day. So, and like aside from just, it's like the social media feeds, which I try to avoid, but man, do they suck you in fast. And
Hmm.
it's literally a time suck. You'll be like, wow, I have like a limit on my phone, but I'm constantly just swiping it away. I'm like, ignore that for today. I'm in the middle of watching funny
Yeah,
reels with my siblings. Like, screw you. Um, but not just that, but the constant flow of, and I'll say this is like I'm not going to say it's a one positive. Obviously, there's a ton of positives for me getting a publisher for my book.
mm.
But now that I have that, being able to turn off all the how to get a publisher post, how to hook an agent webinars, how to,
How nice.
write a book that someone will want to publish. I'm like, check, 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 check. I don't have to read that shit anymore because they're always there. I'm on so many lists, and they're fine, like organizations that put out this work. And there's a lot of people that are really interested in it. But like every day my inbox is just full of like
Mm-hmm.
how-to guides.
Mm-hmm. Classes, workshops,
Yes, yes. How to like build a platform. Without what I want is how to build a platform without, going totally insane. That would be a good, maybe I should teach that. Maybe we can co-teach it. That would be good.
I mean,
How-
if we can figure out a way to do it, sure, why not?
yes, yes. But yeah, so being able to create space for the creativity. Like I took a break over the summer and it was really scary to do it because I had been writing consistently for, almost 3 years and then all the fear stuff creeps in like if I go away, is anyone going to remember who I am when I come back? Cuz stuff
Yeah,
moves so fast and new people show up all the time.
yeah.
And what happened was, since I've come back, I feel really good about what I'm doing, but I lose like 5 to 10 subscribers like every time I post.
That's
And I'm like, who are these
Well,
people?
that's the algorithm. I gotta say, I never used to lose any subscribers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like once a month, someone, whatever like that. And that was consistent until the beginning of this last summer. And then something happened.
Yeah.
And it's like 5 to 8, subscribers unsubscribe every single time I post something. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So something
Yeah.
has happened in the algorithm, whatever that is.
Well, and I do think there's like a move now where people just subscribe to things without actually looking into what they're subscribing to.
That's possible too. Yeah.
Or people just are, fickle, as we've said
Or they're
before.
just also overwhelmed and they're just
Yes.
like, I can't look at another, I mean, Substack is reaching that saturation point where,
Right.
people get it, newsletters. And I still, I do still wonder about, the whole idea of posting every day, you know what I mean, type of thing.
Yeah.
Because it's just like I actually won't subscribe to people if I see that they post every day
Hmm.
because it's just too much.
That's
You
too
know what I
much.
mean? And
Yeah.
it's like and I liken it to myself. I liken it to, a novelist being like, you're going to read my book every single day forever.
Right.
Or one of my book, and it's just like that's not what I signed up for. You know what I mean? I
Right.
like a variety of things, not just.
Right. And that's how I'm kind of handling my inbox now, like, because I'm still subscribed to way too many people. But I try to, instead of trying to like read things as they come in, I try to set aside time where I'll pick through them. And honestly, like I give preferential treatment to titles that are grabby or topics that actually interest me and
Yeah.
things like that. So sometimes I'll miss a person's post because I'm like, I don't have the time or that's just not grabbing me right now. And that's, a message to all of us, myself included, to make sure we're writing stuff that's interesting and grabby, if that's what we want to be doing, or just writing whatever the hell we want.
Well, we write the best we can at any given moment. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's like choices. You always make the best choice you can at the moment.
Well, and that's the thing too. Where did I write this in my notes? I've gone so out of order, it's hilarious. But let's see. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. It was about boop boop boop. Oh, so talking about the platform thing, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about social media
Hmm.
because I noticed that you've got some TikTok people talking about lamb. So are you on TikTok?
No.
Okay. So how do you find out about those?
No. Well, there were only two,
Okay.
and one
It's
of
more
them
than
is
I have. So yeah.
okay. Well, hey, um, one of them was actually a friend, Rhiannon DeVerg, who I adore.
Yes.
She's does TikTok videos, and I knew that. I might have even asked her to do it for me,
Hmm.
and she said yes, which was very, very sweet. And then she also did one, or kind of, I think she did a digest of the one on Instagram as well.
Yeah.
And then the other one was actually a review from NetGalley, who she wrote the review for NetGalley, and then she also did a TikTok, and so she mentioned that she was going to do a TikTok, I think, in the review.
Gotcha.
And so that's how I knew about that one. But I've gone on TikTok. I think I have a profile, but every time I try and at least, like follow Rhiannon or this other woman that did I try and follow them, and it doesn't stick for some reason. So
Yeah,
I'm kind of like, I don't know, do I have to post something first before I can start
I don't
following
know.
people?
I
I don't know.
I was on there for like 5 minutes and then I was like, I don't think I can do this because I write, YA romance. So I've been told up and down. It's like, oh, well, you have to be on TikTok. I was like, really?
Yeah.
Do I
Yeah.
have to be? I'm
Well,
like 46 years old. Like I'm not.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know if that's the place for me. But I do want to ask you because I know you're on Instagram because I follow you on Instagram.
Mhm.
And if I could just not do social media at all, that would be like my dream come true because I
Yeah.
don't believe that it really helps with anything, but everybody is still doing it. So I'm curious now that you have a book out,
Mm.
has being on social media done anything for you in terms of finding readers, selling books, making connections, or has it just been like a null experience, as has mine been?
I don't think that like traditional social media has done a single thing for me,
Hmm.
to be honest. And so I kind of stayed off of all social media until relatively recently. With one caveat, I joined Twitter back when
Hmm.
it was Twitter back in like 2000 and I don't know what, 9 or 10 or something like that.
Right.
And at the time it was fun, you know what I mean? But I
Hmm.
stayed off Facebook. I didn't even know what Instagram was, all this stuff for years and years and years. And then I even actually deleted my Twitter profile when it started getting super political.
Right.
I was, of course, I was following and followed by, all sorts of liberal Democrats, and it just became a screaming factory, of like how horrible everything is, and it was
Hmm.
horrible, but I didn't want to read about it every single day. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Every day, all day. Exactly.
So I deleted it, and I didn't get back onto all of the things until I had finished the first novel that I wrote, which remains unpublished, and knew that I needed to start building an author platform,
Right.
and that social media was a way to do that or whatever. So I have, in the hundreds only of followers on,
Hmm.
any given platform, Instagram for whatever, included. And I've been posting more frequently, more recently,
Right.
because there are some certain sort of metrics and things that I've thought about I might want to try and, exploit as as time goes on. But I don't think it has done anything for me. However, I want to say, Substack absolutely is social media,
Yes, it is.
and so from that perspective, that is my platform, and that's
Hmm.
where I put all of my, not every single egg, but most of my eggs,
Right.
because it worked, because I enjoy it, because it's done a lot for me, and
Yeah.
everything that I have, accomplished with regard to this first book publishing and getting readers and so forth has been through that.
Right.
The blurbs on my cover and the reviews, on Amazon or on Goodreads or whatever. Those are all, Substack people, except
Yeah.
for NetGalley, I will say.
Hmm.
NetGalley is like a review site that
Yes.
you can upload your book before it's actually published, and then you can get people
Review
to
it.
write reviews for
Yeah.
you, which is great, and I highly recommend. It's expensive, but I mentioned in, I think it was in Platform
Hmm.
that there is a website you can. There's probably more than one that you can do like a month of NetGalley. So instead of paying 400, you can just pay them like 60, 70, $80, whatever it is,
Okay.
and just get like a month on NetGalley. And
Hmm.
and I think that's probably something I will do. I was very fortunate that I went to the Unconference in Matera, Italy this last June,
Yeah.
and that was wonderful. It was an extremely small group, like 30 people, and a lot of really experienced, seasoned, veteran writers, self-published writers, and Book Whisper is they're on Substack, they're on Instagram. Sean Loftus runs Book Whisper, which is a marketing company for self-published authors based in Italy. She very kindly gave me a spot in her NetGalley
Awesome.
lineup or whatever. So that was really nice. But I do recommend NetGalley for people if you can figure out a way to do it.
Excellent. So yes, I'm glad you said what you said because this was one of the things I highlighted here was that while Substack was at one time, they touted themselves as a departure from social media.
Yeah.
It's basically what it's become.
It's just a new kind of hybrid kind of form of
Yes,
social media.
exactly. And I still like publishing there, and I'm still, finding that I'm meeting new people.
Yeah,
And I'm finding I
totally.
have to branch out a little bit now that my book's coming out because it's like a little bit YA romance, which is not what I do on my Substack. And now I'm sitting here going, okay, did I just
Hmm.
spend 3 years building the wrong air quotes platform
Yeah,
for my
yeah.
book? So there's that too. You got to get it in front of the right people. And there's so much. And so
So
one of the
much.
questions I have here written is with the social media thing, because what kills me about social media, and this is where we're going to talk about the authenticity piece,
Mm.
is at some point authenticity, and I've had like a bee in my bonnet about this word and be your authentic self.
Authenticity.
Yes. Like be your authentic self. It's like,
Oh
no,
God.
that's not what you mean. Like what you mean
That's not what
is
you want.
no, it's not what you want. Be what the internet has decided looks like authentic behavior. Like when you're on social media, what you see is people. Well, first of all, anytime you have a camera on you while you're being quote
Mm.
unquote, air quotes,
You're automatically
authentic,
not
you're not. It's
authentic.
it now the authenticity is a performance. And
Yeah.
so my question, I actually wrote it this way. What the fuck are we supposed to do with ourselves on social media? Like you and me, we're not 22 years old. We're not I don't know who I'm speaking to when I'm there. Like, so, I like being behind a microphone. I even like being on camera to some extent. But like the few times that I've tried to create like video content, even like the live stream thing
Ugh.
on Substack, like I'm
Yeah.
terrified of it because
Yeah.
I don't know what to do.
Mm.
And then when I start thinking about it, it's even just like the little things like, oh, something really cool just happened. I better turn what just happened
Mm.
into a social media post.
Hmm.
Like that already takes the
Yeah.
authentic joy out of what I'm experiencing it and turning it into a piece of marketing fluff that is probably not going to work because I get like
And
no love on notes at all.
yeah.
So I guess my question is, and again, why I've invited you here is I've been paying attention to your Substack for a couple of years and I like what you're doing and I like that you are yourself as much as I can tell in your writing and when you show up, to things like this. And I read Lamb and it's beautiful and it feels very personal to me. I feel like we could have a whole episode about Lamb and my experience reading it, but I don't think we have time today. But I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about since your return to writing, you've published Lamb, you've done the Road to Publish series, you started QStack, which is a bestseller, which is amazing. That happened quickly, didn't it?
No.
It didn't?
No, I don't feel like it did.
But
It really,
when did you start it versus like, it
well,
seems
I
like it
did
happened.
start it. I started it last year, but just so you know, I mean, a little behind the scenes, of course,
Yeah.
bestseller status does not apply to the Substack itself. It applies to the profile of the person
Yes. So it's a
who.
combination of
So it's a
Ford Nose
combo
and
of Ford Nose Books and QStack. No, neither one of them individually is a bestseller,
right.
but
Even still.
me as a
Yeah, you are a bestseller. That's even more impressive. So
yay.
like that's
Um,
amazing. I literally have 5 paid subscribers, Troy, and two of
yeah.
them are my family members. So it's like a dream for me. But you'd had a piece in Writer's Digest. Like a lot of good things have been happening, is what I'm getting
Yeah,
at. And
yeah.
it's all come from you showing up and just being honest about who you are and what you care about, which to me is like,
Well,
why aren't
yeah.
we all doing that? And how would you say, do you feel like, and so I will say this, like, since I gave myself the space over the summer, weirdly, I come back, suddenly I'm making in-person connections and getting a book deal. Like, it's almost like I
Hmm.
needed
Yeah.
to just stop carrying everything
Mm.
that didn't feel quote unquote authentic. Felt like what I was trying to do was perform authenticity for everyone. And when I stopped
I
doing that
mean,
and I was like, nope, I need a break.
I don't feel like that was not you though. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, you strike me as, your honest, hilarious, self.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. Yes. And like this podcast, like this is my contribution to authenticity. Like this is why I like to do this because I think, at my most authentic and messy in a
Yeah.
good way when I'm just like talking to people and shooting the shit. And when I'm writing freely and in a
Yeah.
way that isn't like, who am I writing this for other than, myself? Or like sometimes it's another person that I'm writing to secretly, that happens too. But it's the platform stuff, the
Yeah.
how should
Yeah.
I be marketing me or getting people to come see authentic me? It's like now we have to do all these little sound bites and video
Well, and
bites
it's
and
it's more than that too. So not to totally, but I mean, it's all that also, what I'm seeing and what I'm wondering about is, like in terms of sharing the most personal things in our lives, and
Mhm.
that is something that so I'm going to write an upcoming post about this, so I'm kind of giving it away a little bit, but I picked up this book called The Byline Bible, and
Mhm.
it's by, I think her name is Susan Shapiro, and I was all psyched because after the whole push for Lamb and the platform and the good literary citizen thing, you know what I mean, and getting an article in Writer's Digest and another one into Book Life. My goal was to get a third byline this year,
Mhm.
which at this point I don't think it's probably going to happen because I'm barely keeping up with the writing of the newsletters and my own and the follow-up novel with everything that's going on. And in this book, the Byline Bible, she talks about how to get a byline, how to get into a magazine or a journal online or wherever, you know what I mean, anywhere where you can then say, and I am, published in such and such.
Right.
And it's all about, and I can't remember the exact wording, but it's like, humiliation journalism.
Mm.
And it's like talking about, our most embarrassing moments or this awful thing that happened to me or, my take on, what it's like to, whatever, you know what I mean? Wet your pants in public type of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like all this.
Didn't you write a story about that
Did
happening?
I?
I'm pretty sure I read that story in the movie
Probably.
theater.
Oh, I did. Oh God.
You definitely did. That's okay. It was a wonderful story. I can't remember what you wrote it for,
It was a
though. What was
standalone, it's
that?
one of my few standalone stories. It was
Okay. Well, I
one
might I
Vin,
might have
it
to
was
share
one
it.
Vin, two Vin, red
Yeah.
Vin, blue Vin, and Vin Diesel
Right.
appear,
Yes. Okay.
appeared in that. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. If that was drawn from real life, you know what I mean? Then she
Right.
wanted me to write all about the time I wet my pants in public.
Right.
And I was just kind of like, this is the problem, with that. I submitted a piece which I thought was incredibly personal to another Substack. I won't go into it, and the feedback that came back, they liked it, but the feedback was, I want to know more.
Mhm.
I want to know about, this, that, the other thing. I want to know how this affected your marriage. And I'm like, I don't think I want to share that with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or share that with people. You know what I mean? And there are a lot of subsects out there that kind of go into, extreme detail about, people's personal lives. And I think that that's in part what people think of as authenticity now,
Right.
you know. And for example, I just shared an extremely personal moment, this dream that I had, Goodbye, I Love You, last week, which was about a dream that I had about my mother. And it was extremely personal, but also I've been very, sort of forthright about saying, I've got this other sort of new series that I've been doing called It's a Pretty Okay Life.
Hmm.
And these are actually personal stories, that I've been sharing, but I'm doing it very judiciously because, I just kind of feel like there's a little bit too much of that going on. I mean, I don't want to be people to, sort of expect me to just, tell them all of the details about my marriage, about my sex life, about my, what medications I'm taking, for my anxiety.
Right.
I just don't think that that's necessarily everybody's cup of tea, not only to read it, but also more specifically to share that about ourselves in order to be thought of as authentic. You know
Right.
what I mean? And those are things that I do want to come back to, later in my fiction, to take some of those elements. Lamb itself was full of, actual events from my own life that had
Hmm.
then been, put through the washing machine and, and through the ringer and, twisted and turned into fiction. You know what I mean? But that's where I kind of feel like there's such a disconnect, especially for maybe for fiction writers versus for writers that aren't dealing in fiction, that are just dealing in in life in general, and and maybe and it's not that it's wrong, you know what I mean, but it's not for everybody.
Right.
And I don't think that we should think of people that don't share those kind of details as being inauthentic, you know what I mean,
Right.
or ding them for not and not that I feel dinged,
No, but I
like a
complete
ding,
yeah,
but
I completely agree. And I'm sadly, social media has made me very cynical because you see how much of the material is kind of seems recycled.
Hmm.
Like when you see a post come through and you're like, oh, that's funny. But then 2 days later, you see the same post with different people in it and they've just copied. You know what I mean? Then you don't know where it's coming from.
Hmm.
And then as far as like the posts where people are sharing, these intimate and sometimes very traumatic things,
Yeah.
and then they get a lot of like support and sharing and everyone is like, oh, look at this beautiful piece. And then you look at it and you go, okay, did that person write it because they wanted to say those things or because they wanted those people to boost them?
Yeah.
So I get like
And
this
that's actually,
cynical viewpoint of those kind of pieces that
no,
they're there to get people to look at them.
no, that's true. And
And that's a gross way to feel. That makes me feel gross as an empathetic person who, doesn't want people to suffer, but I also don't always want to read about that stuff either because
well, not always.
yeah, not always.
Yeah.
And,
But
I
that's
think,
in the byline Bible.
yeah.
She calls out that other kind of personal stories with us. It's called pity posting.
Hmm.
So, you're posting things, about, and for some people that is in fact, a strategy
Right.
to gain followers and to gain attention, which is like, oh my God, these horrible things that happened to me. I'm so
Yeah.
traumatized. You know what I mean? And again, not wrong, but are we sure, are we sure that we're doing this intentionally? Are we sure
Right.
that, are we sure that we're not going to regret some of this stuff,
Well, there's that too. I mean, that's public and that's like I've never been particularly, I don't write about my family a lot or ever really. Like I think people might know that
Hmm.
I'm married and I have kids, but I don't post pictures of my children or talk about them a lot in detail because I'm like, that's their
Yeah.
life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But some people are really open about that. And it is a choice thing. And I also think, and this is when I've come back to writing now, and I'm trying to like, because not to share my pity story, but like I've been in therapy for a year for my anxiety and other issues. And like something that we've talked about a lot is me approaching writing and my writing life in a way that aligns with my personal values.
Hmm.
Because I think what we've gotten to now is it's more about validation
Hmm.
than our values. So like, and
Yeah.
I can say that I fell into that trap for the first couple of years. I was very much, if somebody latched onto something they liked, I would want to make more of that thing so that I wouldn't lose
Hmm.
that person's validation
Hmm.
instead of
Hmm.
just doing what felt right to me. It's just like with the book deal thing. Like I knew a long time ago that I didn't want to do the agent querying thing.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily want to have an agent because in my mind it would have to be like the most magical fairy godmother of agents that probably doesn't exist because it's a business relationship and I wanted it to be more than that. I
Yeah.
wanted it to
Yeah.
be like a
Yeah.
mentorship. I have all these like lofty ideas of like, oh, we're going to talk about the mentor. That's the last thing we'll talk about is the invisible
Yeah.
or the imaginary mentor. But
Yeah.
but yes, I think there's been a what's the word I'm looking for? A departure from doing the things that feel good to you, like in your soul. You know what I mean? Like social media feels bad to me. I don't like it,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
feel like I have to do it anyway. And that's icky. That
Yeah.
goes back to like peer pressure, icky feelings. And it just, it's not for everybody. And I think we should be okay. This is the whole embrace your boutiqueness thing. Like, Find a different way. There are different ways.
And the quiet power of yes.
Yes.
That was another post that I did, the quiet power of yes,
Mm-hmm.
where, and also the whole road to publish thing, the choose your own adventure approach to writing and publishing books. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like we have to find that way forward. We have to
Yeah.
find the way that we're like, not but yes, I can do this. That's something that I really enjoy. And, and with regard to social media, for example, m most all of them, you know what I mean? I've been like, ugh, just as you have, you know what I mean? But we both of us have been like, Substack, yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So
And as for like I did have the quiet power of yes as one of my things to talk about because that's the thing you hear all the time. It's like, oh, you just need one yes. But we're still all looking for that yes to come from somebody else. But it doesn't have to.
well, that's what the post is
That's
about, you
what
know
the
what I
post
mean?
is about, that it can come from you. And not only that, I think we need to, because one thing I read a lot about over the summer was self-compassion, like a self-compassion practice.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because, you know, you have like the voice of that Harvard teacher in the back of your head. But like, if you're anything like me, you not only have like feedback from outside people, but you have like the voices in your own head. It's almost like the whole practice was about like, how would you talk to like your best friend if they were going through what you're going through, like with your writing? And you would never be as mean to them as you are to yourself, ever.
No,
And so
no,
that's the whole thing.
exactly.
It's like we all need to hear yes, yes, I'm proud of you. Yes, I love you. Yes, you're an amazing writer. But like we are not willing to say it to ourselves. Or if we do, it doesn't carry as much weight. And it really should.
Yeah.
And then the other places where we should be hearing yes is when anyone connects to our writing. Even if it's just they left a comment and they loved it. That's a yes.
Yes.
It's not a yes from like a
Absolutely,
big
yes.
fancy agent, but it's a yes from someone that actually connected with like something that you made. And so, yeah, again, these are like those little stories that don't get all the flashy virality, but are really,
Yeah.
really important for
Yeah.
people who are trying to like stick with this. So let's talk about the imaginary mentor.
Well, that's a perfect segue because that's exactly what the imaginary mentor is. I actually came up with this on my own somehow, and it's possible I read about it somewhere because I've discovered since that there are a number of different people that have talked about this and have said that this is something you can do.
Mm-hmm.
It is basically like one system that they call it two-way prayer, and that is where you write down a question like in a notebook, and then you meditate for 10 minutes, however you meditate, and whether you want to focus on, what the question was, or whether you just want to do like a traditional kind of, empty your mind,
Mm-hmm.
kind of meditation, that's fine too. And then when you come back, to write the answer to the question.
Right.
Mine's a little bit more writerly in that, I center myself and then I just start, I just start talking and I actually write it as a dialogue, like as if it was a script for a play or something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll say my piece and then the imaginary mentor says their piece. And I want to say that it is a really good way to reach that part of you, as we were talking about, where you're not getting the yes from someone else.
Right.
You're getting the yes from yourself. And you're getting that, as you say, that voice that you would give to your best friend or your child or your husband or whomever, you know what I mean? That, if they were having a hard time, you know what I mean? What would you say to them
Right.
in the same situation? And that's the voice that comes through, and that's the voice that you're finding for yourself. And it has been incredibly helpful for me. I mean, I do it as often as possible, sometimes a few days in a row, and other times, a week or two or however long goes by before I do it. But I come back to it because it is so incredibly helpful in so many different situations. And it is getting, and I think that is, if you want to talk about authenticity, that is as authentic as you can get if you can just be kind to yourself,
Yes.
and it's not blowing smoke, up your own, wazoo. It's not platitudes. It's real advice. It's real concerned and kind and compassionate,
Right.
toward compassion towards yourself. So I highly recommend doing something along those lines. There's so many different systems, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Two-way prayer is one of them.
No, it's great. And what I like about it too, because now, of course, we're in the age of chatbots,
Yeah. Oh God.
where you could easily just program some robot to tell you everything you want to hear. But I think this is better, forgive me, AI fans, because again, it's like it's just different. If you're, first of all, you're actively writing. Do you do this by hand, by the way, as opposed to typing? You handwrite, or do
No, no, I type.
you type it? Well, either way though, but either way, you're actively participating
Yeah.
in the response.
Yes.
Whereas when you feed it to something else that's kind of programmed to just stroke your ego,
It's an averaging. Yeah, it's the great averaging comes back from AI.
yes, and you know yourself better than anybody else. So it's kind of like you know how to talk to yourself. And I think that's, yeah, something that's maybe missing for a lot of people is that we're looking for those voices to come from the outside.
Yeah. No.
Because that feels good too when somebody else tells you that you're doing a good job. But like I have a sticky note right here. I have two sticky notes on my computer. One says be direct, and that's to help me with my goal of just telling people what I want instead of like some softened version of that. And the other one says back yourself, which is like
Back yourself.
you got to be 100% behind
Totally.
yourself. Yeah. And not, expect to be carried or lifted to all the places you need to go because it's work. The whole thing is work. And we need to, I mean, no one's forgetting that it's
It's so
work.
much work.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And that's why taking like a little coffee break with yourself is like we all need that and we all deserve that. So, if you have a couple more minutes, Troy, I just want to do like some rapid fire lamb questions just about your. So, I did read the book and thank you for sharing it with me.
Oh, I'm
And the
so
first
glad.
thing I thought of when I was reading it is it felt like a memoir. And I mean, you've mentioned already in this chat that like there are pieces of it that come from your life. But I have written novel that reads like a memoir slash authenticity. So there's something about stories that feel like you're just, again, sitting across from somebody and being told a story that I love. But as someone who also writes stories like that, like my novels are, I wrote them so they're plucky and upbeat and they're about teenagers. So it's a lot of like everybody's horny and like, but my protagonist, it's all first person, present tense. It's
Yeah.
kind of like you're in it. You know what I mean? You're like you're talking to a person.
Yeah.
And I think, and maybe you experienced this because I think you mentioned that you did query a couple of agents with Lamb at some point. Did you do that?
No,
Oh, you
no,
didn't.
no.
Okay.
I queried 60 agents with my first book.
Okay.
But none with Lamb because of course you've proven and Eleanor Anstruther and Kim Warner have proven that previously published work and absolutely can get published
Right.
after having been self-published or whatever. But I think I want to say at this point in time, Empress Editions is still something of a a unicorn.
Yes.
So I knew going in that I wanted to self-publish Lamb. So no, I didn't query.
Right. But what I was going to say, and this is the issue with the traditional publishing route now, is like there are so many like things in your way potentially. Like
Mm,
my book that's going to get published was on Wattpad. And so
right.
that's technically previously published, air
Yeah.
quotes. So I might have struggled, even though I won a Waddy Award for the book
Yeah.
and wanted to
Yeah.
use that as a like,
Surprised someone didn't actually approach you.
well, yeah, and that's the thing. There were so many times where I thought, "Oh, this will be the thing," and then it wasn't, and it turned out the
Yeah.
thing was just me walking up to Elisa Kennedy Jones at a bookstore and
Ta-da.
saying hi. And that worked more authentically for me.
Yeah.
But, there's that. There's, and what I was going to say about the style of your book, and even my books, like I always felt like I struggled to pitch them because they didn't have catchy, traditional commercial plot lines, but they are meaningful works of writing and they have stories and lessons and beautiful people in them. And I think it's just harder sometimes to get those books to get picked up by the people who are really just looking at money and the bottom line and what they know they can sell.
Yeah.
But that's why like Empress is such a fabulous thing because they're saying, no, we're going to publish what we think is good
Yeah.
and fuck all the rest. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
this is what we want to do. Again, it's adhering to our values and what's important to us and what we care about. And that's just like my whole thing. And I feel like we share that. Um, because Lamb was like a beautiful story that felt very personal, whether or not the whole thing was. And I'm curious if the way you wrote it sort of led to your decision to self-publish it rather than work to get it in front of other people, like publishers and things. Like right off the bat, you knew that you were going to want to self-publish it.
Yeah, I mean that was the idea of self-publishing came first, and then the story came out of that.
And are you happy? Do you still believe it was the best course for this particular project based on like how it's gone? It seems to be going
I
well for
do,
you.
you know, I was able to take a lot of chances with Lamb that I probably would not have taken if I wanted to go a more mainstream kind of traditional route. You know,
Hmm.
the bits of poetry, the short stories that I included, you know what I mean? I don't think it would exist if I had in mind, you know. And so with that in mind, and after having attended the unconference in June, I actually decided to extend the story. So the follow-up novel is about the narrator, like 20 years after the events of Lamb.
Hmm.
And the plan at this point actually is to also produce a third book, which would be about Lamb between his disappearance and his death.
Oh, very good.
And so, and that was because, you know, in self-publishing, I knew going in that standalone books are incredibly difficult to do as self-published books. The whole idea behind self-publishing is series, is returning to the same characters, is building this machine where, you know, someone reads your latest detective novel or
Right.
you know, romance or whatever like that. And then they want, you know, I want to know what happens to misery, you know what I mean? The in the first 10 books type of thing. And so
Right.
then they go back. And there is still a certain hope on my part that that may be something that happens is that with the strength of the second and the third book in the series, that it may in fact, you know, kind of turn into a little bit more of a machine, what's it called? A funnel, you
Right.
know, so we'll see. That's the yes. You know what I mean? The yes is, can I do that with these, you know, this queer, not mainstream, contemporary, you know what I mean? It's not genre, you know, so many of self-published authors write, you know, genre, whether romance, crime, mystery, thriller, or whatever.
Hmm.
You know, but this is decidedly, you know, literary fiction, you know, I think small L, small f, in part just because of the voice or whatever, you know what I mean? But so, you know, so I don't regret that. It also doesn't mean that at some point in the future I might not try and, you know, write, or I might write a book and then just be like, I'm going to try the agent thing again. I suspect, and I've written about this in the past as well, I think in platform, that nowadays less and less people are finding agents, you know, through slush piles, through just cold querying, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that instead they're building the platform or they're self-publishing first and they are finding success that way. And then, you know, agents approach them and, you know, and publishers
Right.
approach them. And so I'm kind of looking at it in those in that way first. I'm just working on me for right now and working on, you know, my stuff.
Yeah.
And then if at some point, you know, an agent or a publisher comes along, you know, that would be maybe nice.
Right. You're like, then I'll be in the position to decide if I want that or not, which will be lovely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Any lessons from, what you learned through the whole self-publishing process, like where you spent your money, which things worked for you or didn't work for you in terms of if you did any advertising, like anything that is going to carry over to this second book. I guess recommendations maybe based on like what you've learned
Right.
the first time out.
definitely NetGalley was the one, which I didn't do before I published, but then subsequently because I met people at the end conference and they suggested it and
Right.
gave me that slot actually, which was really kind. That helped build up, reviews a little bit. BookBub.
Hmm.
Of all of the, I have done a little bit of advertising on a lot of different sites just to kind of test it out and see like what works, what doesn't work, and so forth. And of all of them, I've found that BookBub seems to, and not their advertising, by the way. I can't really speak to their advertising because I didn't have very much success with it, and I didn't really care for it that much. In fact, advertising through whether it's BookBub or Facebook or Amazon or whatever, I find it completely Byzantine.
Yeah.
I don't get it. It's weird. It's crazy. It's like it's so convoluted. But I think at some point I'm going to have to figure out at least like on Facebook and Amazon. But BookBub deals. If you can get a BookBub deal, and just go to bookbub.com and look for the author portal or whatever and find their deals or whatever, and whether it's the actual I got the one I got was new books for less or whatever, which you don't have to discount, you know what I mean? It's just your regular price, what you come out with, whatever.
Right.
That one worked out really well. I got quite a few sales of that. And then, but then they also do like 99 cent or discounted sales. You know what I mean? It can be like $99, 99, 2.99, whatever. Or free.
Hmm.
Free, though, is going to be one where you kind of hold off and do that for when you have like another book, you know what I mean? Where you're like, read this one for free and then buy this one full price type of thing. You know what I mean? So BookBub is really kind of, I would say, is something to
Yeah.
investigate more.
Awesome. And I've heard about that one. Actually, one of my guests from the first season, Claudine Wolk,
Yeah,
she does get your book seen and sold. So her whole thing is about book marketing, and that's one she's
yeah,
big on.
for
So
sure.
I would say that has been corroborated for me now twice. So I will definitely be looking into that.
And it is actually, and I've heard that, for their free deals, they actually work really, really well, like hundreds and hundreds of copies.
Yeah.
So if you've got a new book out but you have a previously published book, you know what I mean, then definitely try and go for a free deal because you might end up having really good traction.
Yeah. Excellent. Do you plan to serialize your second Lamb Universe book on Substack?
No,
No, not this
no.
time.
I will do maybe 2 or 3 chapters for free as teasers, but I won't serialize it.
Can I ask why? If there was something that you got from the first experience of doing that that is making you not want to do it again? Just wondering.
I, I actually feel kind of fortunate in that it did seem as though people kind of stuck with it. Now, bearing in mind that, from the first chapter to the last chapter, it was like 50% fewer,
Yes.
likes, comments, and so forth. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And that is across the board. But what I've found actually is that 50% is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Most people see a significant, like 10%. So if you had 50 people on your first chapter, by the time you get to the last chapter, it's like 5 people.
Yeah.
And I think I don't get it. I think it's the format. I think it's I don't know what, you know what I mean? Part of it is that
Well, it's hard for people to wait for stuff nowadays. It's like everything is binge worthy.
that's
And so like
true,
it's a
but at the same time, I wasn't actually even doing chapters every week. I was doing them every other week
hmm.
because I didn't want to just inundate people with only lamb, and I didn't want to publish more than once a week. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
right.
So I did it every other week, and then there was even like a month, I think, like August of 2024, when I didn't. I just had so much going on and other things going on that I didn't publish anything. So it was like a month. And yet that, I kind of felt like people stuck with Lamb better than they have for a lot of other, serial novels. So I don't know, but it just kind of feels like I did it once. I got what I wanted to get out of it. The format of Lamb was so perfectly serial. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
novel in snapshots. It was scenes. It wasn't, there were hardly any transitions. There were hardly any, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't think I want to do it again, if I'm being
Gotcha.
honest. But I will definitely share a few chapters with people in hopes that they will be interested enough to buy the book.
Yes. Excellent. Okay. Well, I think we should stop there. It's been well over an hour. I hope I haven't eaten
Good
up too much of
God.
your day. Yes.
Not at all. Not at
Okay.
all.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Yes, we got talking about so much stuff. I might have to change the title of the episode that I sent you, though, because I feel like we focused on
That's
some different things, but that's okay.
totally
I like
okay.
to be flexible in that way. And
Totally. And add it to your heart's delight if there's, I don't.
oh, yes. Well, no, I will. I'm sure I said some dopey things in there. If anything, I'll cut out my blathering because that happens too. My favorite thing I do is sometimes I'll answer the question while I'm asking it. So then the poor guest is like, so what do you want me to say? Because I did that in the last episode. The guest was like, well, I think you kind of said it for me. I was like, oops. But I like to talk. So fantastic. So I will say goodbye to you here and
Lovely.
so cheers. Thank you, Troy. Take care.
You too.
Hey there! Thanks so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, you can let me know by hitting the like button, leaving a comment, rating, or review, depending on where you're listening, or by sharing this podcast with your favorite people. Talk Fiction is part of a dynamic anthology of short fiction, essays, poetry, humor, and multimedia experiments written and produced by me, Meg Olders. If you're into the stuff I'm making, or you're just into supporting the dynamic individual who makes it, I hope you'll consider becoming a free or paid subscriber at megolders.substack.com. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.